but
It's a fantastic song.
I'm not saying it's a bad song.
It's subjectively a good song,
Right.
but I feel like
I'm not,
everybody has heard it a million times.
I'm not saying it's a
That's good
bad
every time.
song, it's just
You
like,
got an average word length of 8?
that's crazy.
You got 40 letters.
He was picking
Yeah.
the biggest ones.
Randomness.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So I know some of us are still getting ours. Put yours up here once you get them. But I gotta ask, why in the world did every single person get a different response?
Because we all chose different words.
Yeah, there's a word or a phrase, 2 words that we learned yesterday, that kind of explains why each of the samples is different.
Yeah.
Yeah, sampling variability, right? It's important to recognize that in statistics, do we ever prove anything? No. There is sampling variability. All right? We don't know exactly, well I do, I'll reveal it later. But right now, we don't really know what the average word length is, but we've got some samples. Do these samples give us some hints as to what the average word length might actually be?
Yeah, like 3, 4.
You say between 3 and 4, but I want to draw a line really quickly. I want you to see this. You say between 3 and 4, maybe, but like, look at your data again. Do you think that that mark really shows what the whole set of data is looking like?
No, it just
Like-
shows the highest point. I guess so most of them were on the right side, which means it's probably.
So there's a good chunk on the right side. So I want you to think about what you said, the highest point. In statistics, we don't really use this very often. But the data point that we see the most is called the what?
Mode.
Mode. Right. We don't use mode very often, but that's the mode. But if I look at this data holistically, if I look at the whole thing, what do you think the true average word length actually is?
Probably like 5, because of those random ones like 8.
So true average word length, and based on this one, we're thinking somewhere 5. 5 might be a little high.
Maybe like
6.
4.5, 4.6.
Yeah.
Because there's a good chunk of our data below here, but because these are so big, it might pull it this way, right?
Change.
So let's say 4.2, maybe somewhere in here. So average, question mark, right? Okay, so that's what we predict. We have our data, we're making a prediction off of this. But what's the only, and so let me actually also point this out. We'll see this, actually let me go ahead and pull this up. There we go. Does anyone see the presentation that I have? It's
that it?
black little
Over
red.
there.
Yep, that's it. Thank you. All right, so I don't actually know if I updated. Okay, so objectives. Nope, go back. Wrong way. That's not back. There we go. Objectives. We want to know how to identify poor sampling techniques. That's what today's all about, okay? And so I'll explain to you more about what it is when we get there. We're going to talk about what keyword did you say earlier, Jaden?
Randomness?
No, there's something else you said. That's on the board.
Huh? Bias?
Bias, right? What in the world is bias? We're going to talk more about that. And here's something I need you to hear me very clearly on. There are terms in statistics that we have outside of statistics that mean a certain thing. You are going to have to learn how to train yourself to think as how that word means statistically. Because bias in statistics does not mean the same thing as bias in the normal world, okay? And you've got to go ahead and start breaking yourself of that. We're going to talk about bias a whole lot, and why it is an issue in surveys and observational studies, and then talk about the goal of these things. All right, now here's the thing. What's the population for this House of Gold song?
What do you mean?
What's the population?
3 times.
24? 27?
230.
What?
Okay, so there are 230 somethings that make up the population, but what is the population?
Words, right?
Which words?
Individuals.
If you have the population, do you have some of them or do you have all of them? When we say population, we need to make sure that we understand this is all of whatever the individuals are. Remember we talked about individuals yesterday, right? So the population is all individuals. Okay, so keep that in mind. So in this context, my population is all words. That word all has to always be in there whenever you talk about a population. That population is all the individuals. Okay? So the population is all the individuals. So for House of Gold, that is all words. And so what is the sample associated with House of Gold?
5 randomly selected words.
So the 5 words that you chose, right? So sample, the 5 words chosen. So when we say sample, the sample is what of that population?
A portion?
Exactly. That's literally it. When we say a sample, we're just talking about part of the population. Now there is something we want to put with it, part of the population. What are we doing with that sample though? What are we doing with that part of the population?
Predicting the population.
So we're going to use it to make a prediction about the population. What do you say?
Surveying.
We're surveying it. Now we're not really doing, we're going to talk about the difference between observational study and survey, because this isn't quite a survey. I'll explain why later. But what are we getting from that sample to make a prediction about the population?
A representation?
We're going to make a representation. That representation is coming from it starts with a D. We're collecting data, right? Like, what's this whole unit about? Collecting data, right? So the sample is the part of the population we collect data from. Okay? The sample is the part of the collection we collect data from, as Serena said, to make a prediction about the population. Like, that's the whole point. We want to use our samples to help us make a prediction about the population. Okay. And we usually want samples, because what can we not normally get?
The whole population.
And what is it when we collect data from the entire population? What is that called?
Census.
Census, right? Like the census, this is the only, well, let's say this. Census collects data from the entire population. So, would a census be really, really good?
Yes.
Is it usually possible?
No.
No, right? Okay? So we want to know about the population. A census would be great, but we cannot usually use a census. We have to use, so not usually possible. So we conduct studies with samples. Okay. So we can't usually do a census, which I hate using this color. I don't know why I just use purple. I have a million markers in my pocket.
You don't like cyan?
What?
What's one of
You said you didn't like using that.
I don't think it shows up as well as the purple does.
Shows up on.
Well, then I'm crazy. It happens. But yeah, so the census, it collects data from the entire population. It'd be great. We can't actually usually do it, so we conduct studies from samples. But guys, if our studies collect data in a bad way, we can't make good predictions. Right? If we collect data in a bad way, we cannot make good predictions. So, what we're going to do, so we have our predictions up here based on that sample. Now we're going to do a different type of sample. Okay? And for this one, what I want you to do is I just want you to pick 3 different lines and find the average word length of the first 5 words in those lines. So pick 3 lines and find average word length of first 5 words. in each line. So how many samples should you have? 3, right? So you're doing the first 5 words in each of those lines.
Do you want to split the dots?
Yes, please. Does anyone know where I put my House of Gold copy? What if y'all steal it? Bet you
Why are you so like negative? Maybe you missed.
Because I'm around you,
Oh.
Shots fired.
Great.
isn't it?
I'm just gonna drop this class.
He won't.
Is it too late?
Yeah, is it too late? No, literally. Mr. Kenny, you're saying you don't enjoy my company.
What? I didn't say that. Please tell me this is it right here. Of course this is it.
So it's the last place you went.
So do you want us to put the average of like all of them like together or just?
No, just, so you should have 3 different data points up here.
Okay.
I'll use pink.
Okay. And if you have to wrap down to the next line, you can.
That sounds like the thing from Robin Hood.
I was
It is.
literally just thinking the same thing.
It's the rooster. Okay, so you just, same thing we did before, but now you just like select the line and pick the 5 words and then add them together. I didn't get it. So just, so just select your one. Like adding in, like, okay, so now you divide each of those by 5. So, here, I got it, I have it. Oh, you have it, yeah. I added one back there, I thought it was fine. Oh, 11. So, and then we should have 3 different names.
I'm starting to get a feeling that everybody chose the same randomized lines.
Ooh, what do you think about that, Jaden? Did everybody choose the same randomized lines?
Yeah, it is. Oh, yeah. I do it for you.
Okay. So what do we think the average might be now?
3.5, 3.3.
3.3, 3.5, a little bit different of a story, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Based on how things are split, I don't know, I might go 3.4, 3.5. Because we do have a good chunk of that right there at the top. Not really sure. We're going to talk next unit about how to really analyze this data well. But let's say based on this, I don't know where I put it. Okay. I might say somewhere in here. We go with that. Very different story, correct? What is that, 3.5?
That's what we guessed originally.
Yeah, it was. This one we got 4.25-ish. Very different stories. But now what we're about to do is, Jane, you mentioned this earlier. You said something about random. What can humans not really do?
Be random.
We can't really be random. We got to use something to help us out. In fact, there's really no true way to be random, but we're going to use a calculator to help us. So everybody go grab a calculator. And you don't need to log in, so don't sweat that.
Oh my gosh, why can the song not get in my head?
Think of the rooster whistle from Robin Hood.
I don't know what
Okay.
that
You have to
Open up a
listen
calculator
through the whole
page.
song to get out of your head.
So open up a calculator page. Brian decided to print this really quickly. So we have 8 people here, right? Alright, so from here, what I need us to do, I should probably pull this down. Make sure you have a calculator page open. Hey Nate, what's the button that lets you do cool crap on these calculators? Menu. Trini's heard me say it as well. Okay, so any guesses where I'm going to go to be able to actually do true random stuff?
Statistics.
Either statistics or actually for random, you can do it under statistics as well, I think. But what's right next to probability? A little die, right?
Oh my
Go to
gosh.
probability.
It says random.
It has an option for random, right? Now, what I want to caution you with is this. When you go to random, there's going to be a few options. If you do random number, one, don't do that. That random number is actually a random number between 0 and 1. You don't want random number, you want a random integer. Okay? Now, let's do a little experiment really quickly. Random integer. How many numbers do we want? First, we need the lowest possible number. What's the lowest possible identifier for a word?
1.
1. What's the highest?
230.
230, right? So 1 is the first number, or is the first word. The first word is she. The 230th word is disease. So what you do is you put 1, you put comma, right? Lowest and then your highest of 230. And how many words do we want to select?
5.
So I'm going to hit a comma and 5. So random integer 1 to 230, 5.
Wow.
Okay? So it spits out 5 numbers for me. Now we do need 5 different numbers.
I got the same number.
Holy crap, she got the same exact numbers as me. You got the same numbers as me too?
Oh yeah, we got the same.
Oh.
This is
Yeah, this is,
Oh.
I don't think this is random.
Okay, so here's the thing.
I don't think this
Calculators,
is
listen,
random.
there is no true randomness. It's still a computer system. And so there's something called a seeding that tells the calculator where to start. So let's go back. Let's do menu, probability, random, and go to random seed. We're going to tell the calculator to start at different places so we can get truly random values. So go to random seed. Hey Jacob, thank you. Okay. So go to probability.
I just pressed it.
Okay. So we want random seed, click seed, and what I do is type out your full birthday. So for me, March 18th, 1991.
Ooh, you're old.
He's old. Okay, so do random seed and then do this again, right? So don't forget you can always go up until that random integer is highlighted, hit enter. And let's generate 5 new numbers.
How does that work, like the seed thing?
The seed. So there's just a massive string of numbers that is already programmed into the calculator. And when you seed it, it tells it to start at a different place.
That's so weird.
So just pick a really big number for the seed, right?
Sure. I mean, that's why I did my birthday,
Oh.
right? So, did anybody get the same 5 numbers this time?
Imagine.
I mean, I got one on
Well,
the
you just
first one.
copied that. So you want to go up to random integer and then hit enter on that.
Oh,
And it's
okay.
going to spit out 5 new numbers.
Whatever.
Okay? So, anybody get those same numbers?
Something a picture of that.
Okay? So, we're going to do this. We're going to do 3 sets this way and do some new numbers on here. So please notice, if I'm doing this, I'm doing the 154th word. What is the 154th word?
Cents.
Cents. Right? Then I'm going to do the 187th word. So you find the 5 words associated with those numbers, find the average word length of those for you.
Oh, that's a lot of work.
Aww. For that word you complain. That's a word. I didn't forget.
I'm so confused.
Sabrina, I have whiteout on my hand now, I'm blaming you.
Huh?
I have whiteout on my hand now, I'm blaming you.
But it didn't dry.
Jonah, why do you?
But
I didn't wanna mess up.
on there.
I didn't wanna mess it up.
Just take it off.
I couldn't. It's your fault for putting your hand on wet whiteout.
do you want us to do this 3
Why is
times?
your hand all the way up there?
Huh? For the first one, from the first one. When we were doing the first one.
Oh. I was like, why is your hand up there?
How can you have?
By the way, don't forget, we are doing this 3 times.
Okay.
So if you haven't done it 3 times yet, do it the 3rd time. Or 3 times.
How are y'all doing this so fast?
They only did 1 so far.
Feels
Do we need to do a random seed each time?
No, just once.
just once.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Actually, just do it twice. Don't do it 3 times. I'll explain why in a second. So just do it 3 times, or do it twice for now.
You want us to find another random 5, right?
So yeah, 2 sets of 5.
69.
Hey, my arms are really close.
Right there. You tell them.
Yeah.
You already did both your sets?
I thought I knew what we were doing.
Huh?
I thought I knew what we were doing.
Why didn't you ask?
Because.
Did you generate your 5 numbers? So did you find the 205th number, or 205th word? You marked them? So 205. Oh, wait. That's not 205. So that's 198. 199, 200, 201, 202, 203, 204, 205.
That's what I was thinking.
No, those are the words, I'm sorry. 45. So that's the 46th word, so this is the 45th. 223rd. 122, 3. 182, 197, 186, 5, 4, 3, 2. And 183.
Look at this, I'm taking it, man.
Does that make sense now?
Yeah,
So,
they're really
6,
good.
9,
Is it
11,
Mickey Mouse?
14,
Mickey
18.
Mouse.
You got corrected by this thing. It's talking about the one that's lower than
So is
the
that
other
one-
one.
do the second one for you.
If this one was slightly more to the left, it'd be Mickey Mouse.
One thing this was just double.
Get new random generated numbers and then count it again.
You put video games?
Which one?
Oh, yeah.
Double that.
So you got the 2.4 and 4.8?
Just marking 0.
Wait, is this supposed to be the 2.4? No, who did this one that was less than 2?
Oh, that was me.
Yeah, I was,
Really?
I was wondering about that.
You
You
got
got
one-
1, 1, 1, 1.
1.8.
Like, do you get like an eye?
That's wild.
There's
I
like,
guess you only got like
Did you have?
I guess there could be
I
like
and
multiple
I.
eyes, yeah.
an I, and maybe a wheel or so there. Or
Well,
up.
oh, you should have done these two.
Oh, yeah, no, these two.
Okay, so 211, I, 201.
You gotta do like the dread.
The only one of those to do it twice.
So that'd be 98, 99,
The
200.
C
So that's
thing?
actually 201 right there.
Yeah.
Because that'd be 198, 199, 200, 201. Sorry, that was
Dude.
And then 169 is I.
It literally covered my entire
112.
3 pages.
18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12.
Why are you trying to play a
No,
game?
I don't want this.
Yeah, it should have probably been a little bit higher, but it's fine. All right, so if you are still working, get yours done, put it up here. So a little bit different of the story now. What are we thinking the average word length might be now?
3.8.
Yeah.
That is the most common, but like if I put a line right here, does that really look like it's the middle of that data?
6 maybe. It's like
3.6. I was
Most of
honestly,
it just 3.
I was thinking of maybe 3.2 in here.
3.2.
But yeah, we do have some bigger, we have a bigger chunk over this way, so maybe it's 3.5, 3.6 still. Okay, so we used a calculator to collect random data. Now I'm going to show you about a random digit table. This doesn't show up very often on the AP exam, but I want you to be aware of it just in case it does. It has shown up once or twice. So here's what we used to have to do in the olden days, and by we, I've never had to do this. I used a calculator my entire life, because I'm not that old, Serena. But a random digit table, right? So these are a different set of random digits, and what you're going to do is you're going to pick anywhere on this table to start. So is it likely that any of us pick the same spot
Yes.
to start? If I manage to pick the same spot as someone else, that's crazy. All right, it's possible, but not very likely. Now, here's the thing. How many words are there on the House of Gold sheet?
200.
230, right? So how many digits do I have to look at a time since there's 230 words?
240.
How many digits?
Oh, 3.
I would have to look at 3 digits, right? 230 has how many digits associated? 3 of them, right? And so let me erase some of this. And so here's the thing, and I need you to pay attention to this. So what number would I need to see to maybe have the 57th word on here?
A 0, like,
You're right. Huh?
a 0, 0, or 0, 5, 7.
To get 57, because I'm looking at 3 digits at a time, I would have to see 057. Okay? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start here. A random place in the table. Okay? I'm going to go every 3 digits. Now, 394, is that even a word on...
No.
No, so I got to ignore that. The next 3 digits, I've got 216. Is there a 216th word?
Yes.
Alright, so I'm going to use the 216th word. I'm not going to be able to use 585th or 585th, but I can use the 4th word. I'm going to keep doing this until I get how many words? So find 5 words and find the average word length of those 5 words. So I got the 4th word, 266 doesn't work, that doesn't work. What do you think I'm going to do when I run out of room and I have to keep going?
Next line.
I go to the next line, right? So 937 doesn't work out, I've only got 3 words. I go down to the next line until I find my 5 words. There we go.
You took one of our sheets.
Sorry. Here you go. Okay? Help each other out. Let me know if you need help looking at this.
Can we write on this or?
Yeah, it's yours. So one thing I would do is I would circle, so I would mark through things. So where did you start? You started at 625? Okay, so no, no. So look again though, so it wouldn't be 2, you gotta go 3 digits.
Oh,
So it'd be 20. 640, no. So that's why I circle, and you have to go 3 digits each time, okay?
Apostrophe as a digit.
I would not consider that a letter. It's the average word length, or average letters per word.
Are we doing this one time?
Yeah, we already have 2 from the calculator, so 1 is fine. If you finish before everybody else, do it another time though.
Let's just do it again.
If you're done and there's still people working, then yes, please. The more data, the better. Alright, has anybody not gotten a chance to put a dot up at this point? Alright, everybody's got at least one up? Okay, just gonna get another one ready to go. Alright, so we are now ready to actually find out what the true average was. By the way, when we say the true average, what we mean is the population average. That's also known as the population mean, okay? We're gonna talk about the population a good bit, but we're using samples to figure this out. So based on this random assortment, what do we think the true average might be?
Like 3.5-ish.
3.5-ish? 3.5 kind of looks to be roughly in the center, does it not?
Like 3 point, yeah.
Yeah, I'd say it's.
3.5 right here?
Yeah.
That's the mode, it's probably the
Not like a straight
median.
line. It's like goes all the way.
It's literally a straight line.
Okay, so 3.5,
Yeah.
Let's go with that.
let's go with that. So, the true average is 3.552 letters per word.
Oh, yeah.
Did you go and count every single?
No. What I did was, I'll explain in a second.
Just add everything up.
So the population or true mean, that's the Greek letter mu. Okay, so when we use the Greek letter mu, we were talking about the population. Y'all really? I should
I
have
can't.
thought about that, but y'all are.
Move.
Golly.
How do you know about that?
Why
Mr.
did you
Danny?
have to tell
Yeah.
us?
No, he's not that
I don't
old.
live under a rock. I read the stuff on the internet.
He's
You
on
read
TikTok.
stuff on the
Alright,
internet.
so
Bro's been researching mewing.
quick couple of points. Okay, so one, what type of sample did we take here at the end? What type of sample did we collect here at the end? Look at your
Random.
notes.
Random.
Right, they're random samples. And there's lots of different types of random samples. We're going to get into those today. But this was a random sample. Okay? Anyone know what type of sample we took here?
Subjective.
Not a subjective.
Convenience.
I don't know, it's not a line.
I just want to point out one thing that Sprig's doing very well right now that some of y'all could be doing is looking at the notes where there's only a few options.
Convenience.
It is a
I
convenience
said that.
I
sample.
made that up.
Okay? Anyone know why we would call this a convenience
It's
sample?
convenient.
Because you don't have to search for the words, you
It's
just
convenient.
pick the first 5.
Right, it's convenient. It's literally easy. Like that's one of those beautiful things about statistics is we're not trying to be tricky. It's a convenient sample because we just said the first 5 words in that line. It was convenient. It was easy. Okay? And then what would the top one be?
Subjective.
Subjective.
Because you just went random across.
Yeah, you just.
But hold on a second. I thought this was random.
Yeah, but
Uh-uh.
pulse
It's
is random
subjective.
isn't
Subjective,
completely
you
random.
Per people random.
Yeah.
But that would so what does the word subjective actually mean?
Like,
Up to your
Subject to, like,
discretion?
you.
It is up to your discretion.
nerd.
When we say the word subjective,
Oxford.
up to your discretion, it is it goes on your judgment, right? If you have personal judgment or decision making in the situation, that is the definition of subjective. Okay? So which of these missed the mark most consistently?
Subjective.
Subjective, okay?
Yeah, I wonder who that 8 point something is.
I
Right.
wonder what that outlier is.
Okay.
Outlier reference?
Serena, wrap it up.
Okay, well, we're gonna learn about how to properly define an outlier later this semester, actually next unit. So be careful statistically, don't say outlier unless you know it's an outlier.
That's an
Potential-
outlier. It's like all the way
Ooh.
over there.
You don't know.
Zanna.
There are two
Wow.
ways,
Wow.
listen, there are two ways we define outliers in statistics. You have to actually check to see if it's an outlier. If
Speaking of that, did I leave my outliers book in here?
you did. I put it somewhere for safekeeping. I think it's on that seat right there underneath the.
That's not
Um,
safekeeping.
Right here. Okay, so it was a subjective sample, so I need y'all to make a note of this somewhere to yourself. So what made that a subjective sample? It was your own discretion, it was your personal judgment, something like that. So if something is subjective, you had a personal choice in the matter. a subjective sample, the researcher, the one collecting data, has discretion or judgment in the matter. Okay?
So,
I don't know how to spell discretion.
Discretion.
I forgot that.
I know. Okay? So you have discretion, you have a judgment in the matter. And so that one missed the mark pretty consistently. You know what we call it when we consistently miss the mark?
Wrong.
No.
Imprecise?
No.
A bad sample.
Yes!
Oh.
You're actually right, not the word I was looking for. But what is the word for when it's a bad sample, when it will consistently miss the mark?
Inaccurate sample.
Inaccurate.
bias.
Uh-oh.
Oh wait, really? I was
Really?
just reading off the
Really?
paper.
Guys, biased sampling, let's say it that way. So biased samples, or biased sampling, that is when the sampling is done in a way so that multiple samples, so that in repeated sampling, the samples miss the mark. I need to be very clear about this. Just missing the mark once is not bias. In our random samples, did we miss the mark some?
A little bit.
A little bit, right? Missing it once is not bias. Collecting data in a way so that you will repeatedly miss the mark, that's bias. Collecting data in a way so that you repeatedly miss the mark is bias. So collecting data in a way so that you repeatedly miss the mark is bias.
If it's above 8, it's bias.
But again, that's only one data point, right? Consistently missing the mark. And so I will say this. Convenience in this case, yeah, it missed, but was it kind of centered around the true mean?
Yes.
Now, do you think convenience is a biased sampling method or not?
Yes, because you can, I just chose the full 3 lines because they're repeated a lot.
Okay, so is convenience going to be biased long term?
Yes.
Yes.
But less than subjective.
What is the maybe, because maybe you have really good decision making, right? Let me make this very clear. What is the only type of sampling that can reduce bias?
Random.
Random. True random. And what do we need for true random? A
Computer.
computer, a calculator, a random digit table. Let me say this very, very, very clearly. Only random sampling can reduce bias.
What if I close my eyes and
Yeah, like what if you roll the dice, like you
You
close it and then you
You
roll
get one of the big
Well, a
stones.
die
It's
is
still
random,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Unless it's weighted.
But see, here's the thing. There's still personal judgment in that. You have natural inclinations to where you go. Human beings will never be truly random. I think Jaden said that yesterday or this morning, one of those, or beginning of today. Human being will never be truly random. You may think you're random, but please hear me clearly.
Wait.
Yeah.
What about a person who has Tourette's and they say like
They still have.
That's
It's,
not
I
what
say
it
they have
says.
very clear inclinations,
That is
right?
so wrong.
They usually say the same words. That's all I'm saying. Okay. Anyway,
That is so
so
wrong.
random sampling is necessary for good sampling. Now, one key thing I need you to hear me on, because this will show up on the AP exam. You can never eliminate bias. What word have I been consistently saying with that bias? It was an R word.
random. I don't know.
Something we do to the bias. We don't eliminate it, we reduce it.
Oh yeah.
On the AP exam, on my test, in statistics, be very clear, you can only reduce the effects of bias. You can never eliminate them. We are trying to reduce the effects of bias. Okay?
How's there bias in a true random sample?
So, when it comes to studies, it's not just about the way that you collect, or it's not just the way that you sample, but like, let's say that and we're gonna actually talk about this a little bit later, but let's say I go up to a group of people and I'm trying to talk about the most recent election with them, which is always dicey in the first place, right? But let's say I'm trying to talk with people about the election and I start asking about, man, can you believe like the absolute ridiculousness that was that election? What's going to happen to those people when I word it that way?
They're
We're
gonna
gonna
agree
assume
it's
you're, like-
ridiculous.
They're going to agree it's ridiculous. But what if I tried talking it up and like, man, it was so exciting that Trump won, what's going to happen more than likely?
They might disagree with you or they might agree with you.
Right? So when the way that I word things can cause differences in responses,
That's
right?
how, that's what we're learning
That's
AP
AP
Lang.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
You learn that AP Gov too.
Because statistics is very heavily used in government, right? So the way you word things can also introduce bias. Just the fact that I'm talking to a person about politics could introduce bias. Maybe I do a paper survey instead of actually talking to them, and that gives me better looks. So bias is not just about how I decide who's in my sample, it's also how I collect the data as well. Does that make sense? That's why you can never eliminate bias, okay? So you can never eliminate bias, you're only trying to reduce it. Go for it. And I think Nate had a question, but what were you gonna ask, Serena?
I was just,
Oh,
I was like thinking about what Austin did last year, like I've been asking people and stuff.
I know, it's like he had a project or something associated with bias.
Are we
Maybe.
gonna have that?
Maybe. Nate, did you have a question?
Oh.
Alright. So, we already went through all this, we collected our data. We don't have time for this, sorry. Really quick thing
Harry
that I
S.
wanted to talk about
Oh, yeah.
is Harry S. Truman had one of the, what is widely considered one of the wildest upsets in election history. And all the pollsters had him as losing. And then to the point where they actually, there's a famous picture of him,
Like with this newspaper
It's in-
Dewey?
it's in-
yeah, of Dewey wins the election, right? Well, what happened was, this was early on into our understanding of statistics, and so what people did is they did quota sampling, and so the only really requirement was that you go get a certain number of people that were black, a certain number of people that were in this age range, a certain number of people that were male, a certain number that were female, but pollsters had discretion, had subjection in who they actually talked to within those quotas. And so it turns out that they didn't do very good sampling, and so all the polls had Harry S. Truman losing, and that's why we got that picture. And so he actually ended up winning pretty handily because a lot of people shifted their minds over the last 2 to 3 weeks, and they didn't carry out studies the way they should have.
Love the underdog.
I know, right? So, it matters. So, we talked actually already about this. What's the problem with convenient samples? They're easy. What has to be true though for them to be good samples? They can't be convenient, they have to be random, okay? So I mean like that, there's more that you can go read about in the textbook, but again, I'm trying to be quick, please read through those things. What is bias? That's sampling done in a way that the samples will what?
Be
Miss
like,
the mark.
Not just miss the mark,
Repeatedly miss the
Bad.
mark.
repeatedly or consistently miss the mark. Okay, so it's important to recognize that bias is not just missing the mark once. We missed the mark, right? But the average of all these did not miss the mark. Bias is when we consistently miss the mark. Okay? So, let me ask you this. I'll let you write that down and I'll ask you about this next question. Do you think voluntary response sampling, first off, what do you think I mean by that?
Like
If
go
you
up
let
to
somebody
someone.
in
It's like-
something.
someone who
On
wants
their
to
own accord.
respond.
Or it's like if you send out like 10 letters and only 5 people send it back.
Okay, so I'm glad you brought that up. And we have to be careful about this, and it took me a long time to get the difference. There's something called non-response, and there's something called voluntary response. So if I send letters to somebody and they choose not to respond, that's going to be non-response. That is a type of bias, though. Okay. Huh? It's still non-response bias. So if you select somebody, you send them resources and they choose not to respond, that is non-response. Volunteer is, let's say I have a booth out in front of the school and I ask, hey, who wants to do this survey? If you don't actually select them, you just ask for volunteers. That's voluntary response. Does that make sense, that difference, Brayden?
Yeah.
Okay. So non-response is you select them, they choose not to respond. Voluntary response is you just kind of put it out in the ether and you say, hey, who wants to do this survey? Who wants to participate in this study? That's voluntary response. Do you think that is going to be a good sampling method?
No.
No.
No. Why not?
Sometimes people, like, they might have answers to it, but they might not, like, respond, so you're missing, like, this whole group of people who, like, could definitely, like, tone your votes a different way,
Mm-hmm.
but they just aren't the type of people to go and, like, respond to something.
Okay.
It depends on how you send out like the question or survey or whatever you're doing. Because, you know, if you have, like what Brayden said, if you like mail something out, there are certain people or groups of people who like mailing stuff over other people. And
Okay.
certain groups of people who check their mail more.
Okay.
So that's a bias.
Okay.
Cloud knows.
So, yeah, Clown knows. You got it. So we don't have time to do the full thing that I like to do, and I'll do it with my Algebra 2 class, but we don't have time to do this because, you know, snow and trying to do stuff. This is called box balling, okay? With box balling, what you do is you wrap this around your head, and yes, I know I look goofy. Yep, that's about the right height. And so we try to figure out, hey, how many times can I hit this in a row without messing up? I failed. So, let's say I want to know, what is the average number of times that someone can hit this without messing up? If I just ask for volunteers, who's more likely going to volunteer?
The
People
people who's good at doing that.
People are good at doing this, but what kind of people would probably be good at doing this?
Athletic.
Athletic people, better people who are used to hand-eye coordination things, right? So would volunteer response sampling give me a good picture of who can, what the actual average number of hits without messing up is?
No.
No. Volunteers typically differ from the population in a meaningful way. So volunteer response sampling is going to traditionally be what? It's going to be biased. There we go. So volunteers typically differ from the population. So the samples are biased. Sometimes all you can do is get volunteers. And we'll talk about when that's okay later. But as a general rule of thumb, volunteers typically differ from the population, so the samples are biased. Maybe someone feels very, very strongly about politics, and so they volunteer to have their voices heard. Usually when we talk about politics, we hear from the far right, and we hear from the far left, and we don't hear from the middle, right? That's how politics oftentimes work. When we do something athletic, typically athletic people will volunteer. That does not give us an accurate picture of what the entire school would look like. And so volunteer response sampling, it's bad, it's biased, because the volunteers typically differ from the population. Make sense? Sweet. Questions before I continue? Go for it.
My turn?
After class, we gotta move. All right. So, there is always a check your understanding throughout the textbook. And it's usually a chance for you to actually check, do you understand what's happening? There are answers I've already uploaded. But this is the real check your understanding right here. So numbers 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 off of page 264. Those are the problems from the textbook that I have selected that go along with these ideas. If you feel like, hey, I don't need to check myself on these ideas, I'm good to go, that's a choice. You can do that. What I would at least do, even if I don't write it out, I would at least look at those questions and read through the questions. If you look at the questions there and you say, yeah, I'm good, I got this, then don't attempt it. But if you're like, man, I probably need to check and actually see if I know how to do this, do those questions, check yourself, and then when we come back in class, the beginning of class, you will have a chance to write whatever questions you have on the vertical surface as your bell ringer.
So this is on Schoology, right, the textbook?
Yes. Yes, the textbook is on Schoology. Hopefully we'll have new books soon. All right, so let's see. To estimate the proportion of families that support budget cuts to the athletic department, the principal surveys families as they enter the football stadium on Friday night. How does this result in bias?
Because they're already going to the football game, so they'll have like, they're biased to the athletic programs.
Okay, so they are probably, what? Probably support sports?
Yeah.
Okay, so, and not budget cuts? Now, I need you to hear me clearly on this. On the AP exam, this is only going to earn you half credits. This will only be a partially correct. So on the AP exam, there's incorrect, partially correct, and essentially correct. Because you also have to hit the second part. If they ever ask you, hey, how is this going to introduce bias, or how does this result in bias, you need to tell the context, but you also need to talk about the estimated proportion. So do we think that the proportion of these families entering the football stadium is higher or lower than the true proportion who support budget cuts?
Lower, because there's less people that will support the budget cuts.
So they support sports and they don't want budget cuts, so they are probably going to have a lower proportion who support budget cuts. So probably
Do we have to put probably?
yes, because do you know for sure?
Okay, but it makes it sound,
Like you don't know what you're talking
yeah.
about.
But you know what
Probability.
never happens in statistics?
We
You
never know what
can
we're
never
talking about.
prove what you think.
Okay.
So
but
we
it's-
are always dealing in the gray area of this is what we think might be true.
Because like, what if a bunch of people are going in there to protest like football games or something?
It's like a special case.
Well, it could also be that they recognize,
Why would
hey,
protest
we
be
have
better?
more than enough. We can take budget cuts so we can support elsewhere, right? So probably lower proportion than the population, or proportion, so lower proportion who support budget cuts.
Are you gonna like go into depth on how to like answer these free response questions correctly?
So, fun fact, as long as you get the essential ideas, you're good. I will go into a lot of detail on key ideas like this, like you have to talk about why there is bias there, and then what the proportion will be lower or higher. But that's it. As long as you adequately answer that, Serena, you're good.
Can you show us?
So there's no perfect wording for it as long as you hit those two ideas.
Can you show us some FRQs?
Not today, but we'll always do at least 2 or 3 FRQs before every test. I won't say 2 or 3. At least, we'll probably do 2 before every test. And every test will be very heavily based like the AP exam. You will see a lot of questions like the AP exam
What's
before you
the
get there.
proportion of like MCQs to FRQs on?
So there's 40 multiple choice questions, and there's 6 free response questions. They each count half of the overall group. So your 40 multiple choice questions are half of the score. Your 6 free response questions are half your score. Yeah. All right, so really quickly, we need to be able to identify each random sampling technique and identify when one sampling technique may be more advantageous than another, and explain how to use various tools to randomly generate a sample from population. Whew. So here's the thing, you've got to have what involved when sampling? Random, right? That randomness is going to reduce bias, but there are multiple types of random sampling, and there are different times when those different techniques are better than others. So, let's look at what a simple random sample is. Actually, yeah, let me pull up the true definition. So I'm going to pull up the true definition. Jaden, you want to hit the lights, or Peter, lights for me?
Barnes and Noble,
Lots of notes.
AXA.
What page was that, 253?
Yeah.
Man, why are you not lying to me like this, Serena?
I'm not lying.
She's
There it
not
is.
lying.
Oh, only partially. So random sampling, yeah, random sampling involves a chance process, so not simple random, hold on, just look at this is random sampling. Random sampling involves any chance process to determine which members of a population are included in the sample. So if there's any kind of chance, that's random sampling. Simple random sampling is chosen in such a way that every group of n individuals in the population has an equal chance to be selected as a sample. Ugh, that's weird.
I can't see it.
Are you gonna list write it down?
Yeah.
Cause I look you wanted to.
Can we write down the first one too?
You can on your own time.
Alright. Can we get a picture?
No, write it down.
I can't keep writing my name like that.
Hey, you can turn the desk.
Or I can just get a picture right now.
Ooh. She could do. I did.
So a simple random sample of size n is chosen in such a way that every group of n individuals in the population has an equal chance to be selected. I will explain why that language is important after we talk about what is called a stratified random sample. At the end of the day though, if you're thinking about a simple random sample, you are simply letting each object have an equal chance of being selected. Okay? You're letting each object have an equal chance of being selected. Now, sorry. I am going to show you from the textbook, and so the textbook is literally written by two of the absolute best, or the textbook I've chosen, two of the absolute best people in the AP Stats world. They have been chief readers for the AP exam. They legit know what they're doing. I've met one of them and I've seen the other, but
Rose a fan.
First one.
huh?
Rose a super fan.
Oh, do you grade
Oh, yeah.
the AP stats stuff?
I do.
Nerd.
So here's something I want you to hear me very clearly on. If you, on the AP exam, there's almost
My hair.
always one question where they ask you to describe a proper process for randomly selecting a sample, okay? And I need you to pay attention to this. You have to follow this three-step process. I thought I made this clear last year, and still people on the test, one or two of them missed it. When you are choosing a simple random sample with technology, first things first, you have to label each individual in the population. I didn't have y'all do that, but did I label the 230 words in House of Gold?
Yes.
You have to label everything first. After you label every individual in the population from 1 to n, you then use a random number generator to get n different integers, where n is the sample size. So you label, you randomize, and then after that, and I know it's going to sound goofy, you're like, I know I told you to get the 7th, 3rd, 15th, and 23rd person. But after you randomize, you then very clearly have to what? Select. You have to label, randomize, and select the individuals. You have to talk about all three of those things when you're on the AP exam and when you're on my test. And if I ask you, hey, explain how you would randomly select in this case.
So,
Okay.
would you just like say label, randomize, select in a sentence, or would you have to define them?
So again, it's not like you have to do it this one way. You have to have those ideas. What I would do is I would do it very plainly. I would do step 1, label each individual from 1 to, we've got 30 individuals, right? Step 2, I would use a random number generator to select 4, or random number generator to get 4 different numbers. Step 3, I would select those individuals.
Okay.
Like I would write that out, but you don't have to follow that exact format every time. But it is a nice clean way to do it. Okay. So here is an example for us to do this with. So the manager of a mall plans to survey a random sample of 3 stores to determine the hours they would like to stay open during the holiday season. So what's the first thing we got to do? Or like if I was asked to describe this, what would I have to do?
Label.
Label. Now, do you have to label it this way?
No.
No, you could label it across if you want. Doesn't matter, but I got to label. What do I have to do after labeling?
Random, select.
Randomly select. We already used the random digit table, so instead of that, use a calculator, randomly select 3 stores for me. Actually, yeah. I guess we've already done this, so we don't really have to do this.
Wait, okay.
Sorry, I'm just thinking, trying to save time.
What's the first number you plug in? I know the second one's like, how
So
many-
what's the lowest identifier we
Okay.
used?
One.
One.
And then the highest is 21.
Right. So yeah. And so if you were to write about this process, what's the first thing you would need to write about?
Labeling.
So label each store from 1 to 21.
Thank you.
Okay? So guys, again, if you were writing about this, label each store from 1 to 21.
Free.
Then what?
Then you
Randomize.
Randomly,
select 3 numbers.
not select 3,
In-
randomly, there's a G word,
Sort.
generate. Because you're going to generate, then select. Okay? So randomly generate 3 numbers. Now, there's an important question. If I wanted to determine the hours they like to stay open, should I allow there to be repeated sampling, or should I do it without replacement?
Without replacement.
So you see how there's a difference, right? What do I mean by sampling with replacement?
It's like choosing 2 of the same word on the like possible thing.
So whether, now be careful. The reason I say that. Okay? So when I talk about this, are those different words or are those the same words?
Different.
The same.
I thought they were the same.
They're
So-
different like examples of the same word.
So they're different examples of the same word. They are the 68th. So they are the 68th and 74th words. So are they different words? Yes, in terms of statistics, they are different words. So it's important to recognize that small difference there. So I would not have wanted the 68th and the 68th word, but I can use the 68th and the 74th word, even though they're the same exact word. Does that make sense? So it's not just, hey, it's like we don't want the same individual.
So
That's
if
how I
there's,
should say it.
2 of the same stores in the mall,
Two.
it would be fine.
So with replacement, let's say it this way. With replacement, same individual, or individual can be selected more than once.
Just wait a minute. There's like thing for sampling with this.
Okay. Yeah, there is a section for with and without. Because I want y'all to notice, that's the same word, but is that the same individual? That's the way I should word that. It's a different individual. Same word, different individual. If it's without replacement, if we sample without replacement, then what?
Cannot be selected more than once.
So I should bring this up. And the reason why I say this is, on the AP exam, you have to be very clear that you are generating 5 different numbers, 5 unique numbers, so that you are sampling without replacement. When
So-
you word it on the AP exam, you have to generate, so what was it, label, randomize, right? So when we randomize, we have to generate
Without replacement.
without replacement or unique numbers. So you can say something about unique numbers, you can say without replacement, but you have to include that wording on the AP exam. So label, randomize, select. Make sure that you're generating unique numbers or you are generating without replacement. Okay, without replacement or unique numbers. Okay. Does that make sense?
Why are you whispering?
I'm letting you think.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, I forgot that I literally had it in here. Okay, so how do you account for sampling with replacement versus without replacement on a table of random digits or other random number generators? What are you going to have to do?
Make sure you don't have the same number twice.
So do not use the same number twice, right? So if you ever get the same exact number, you skip it. Okay? And that's the idea of getting unique numbers. So skip repeating numbers. So that's another way you could say it, is I'm going to skip repeating numbers. If it's with replacement, it doesn't matter. Oh yeah, what does it take to earn full credit on examples like the one about mall hours? Label, randomize, unique numbers, and select the malls that correspond to those numbers. Oh, and that's another goofy thing that they're really anal about. When you select, you have to select individuals corresponding.
Are you gonna go over this again before we take the exam? Like,
The AP exam or the test?
the AP exam?
Yes.
Okay.
But you also are supposed to be, I would put this kind of information in the right spot on the Frere model because that's your study guide.
When would you say we would finish all of this?
The whole course or
Yeah.
this unit?
I would say the whole, cause.
My
senior-
goal is by the end of April or a little
Okay,
before.
so.
Yeah, 'cause
you know the
seniors
three
leave at,
steps,
like, the
whatever
28th.
strategy?
Yeah,
Are you
seniors, like,
serious?
yeah, our last day is the 28th, the 29th and
April.
30th is all exams.
Yeah, I
The
mean,
annual
so for real.
Well, I would highly recommend you still come after that.
I probably will, I have 4.
Alright.
Yeah.
We got 15 minutes. I need to get through the different types of sampling quickly. Yeah. Alright, so here's what I need you to do. I'm gonna draw this up on, or actually I'm gonna get another sheet of paper on the board, but I need you to use a random number generator, pick a simple random sample of 4 plots. Okay, so you're gonna place an X on the 4 plots that you choose. You're then going to use a random number generator, pick a random number between 1 and 5, circle that number, and then circle every 5th from there. So I'm just making this up, so maybe these are my 4 samples, right? That's my simple random sample. Let's say I randomly generate the number 2, and then I go every 5th from there. Was it 17? Okay, so that's what I mean by doing those samples. So randomly generate those samples, okay? And then follow the directions for the next 2 as well.
Okay, you want us to use paper or
Calculator. We will use calculators for all things in this class for the most part. So use your random generators on the calculators.
So do I have to do the whole thing again if it gives me 2 identical numbers?
Yes. You don't have to do the whole thing again. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, just because you did comma 5 or whatever. You can do individual numbers at a time if you want, but yeah.
I think it's just it's 124. Okay.
That's
Crap, I just.
crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Like this, like how I got 2 17s. I had a really good night's rest last night.
I can tell you're ultra sassy today.
This is an AP conversation, see your way out of it.
Oh.
Ooh.
You say AP conversation?
Oh my. He heard me. Don't tell me your hearing's going out with old age.
What did you say?
Prove a point.
19.
For number 2, you couldn't get that unless you mean
Oh, we also have the circle.
every 4th number?
Nope, every fifth.
The one pick a random number.
Wait.
I want every fifth.
1, 2. Well, then you couldn't have 5. Because you
Okay,
mean the river.
So you do the same thing except for instead of one.
Oh, you saying
five.
1 through 4 and then
So
circle
1, 5, 1.
every fifth?
Well, I got 1, and then every 5th number from there. Eventually.
1, 6, 11, 16.
Wait, come on my paper. Alright. The first one from it, the second, third, fourth,
And then
fifth.
circle next.
No. That's going up here.
No.
Oh, we're good.
Wait, but either way, so it'd be
I'll look
the
at
first
it.
one.
Oh, I didn't realize that got over there.
Second, third, fourth, fifth. Wait, sorry. First,
Add
second,
5,
third,
bro.
Yeah,
fourth,
you
fifth.
X all the numbers, right? Five,
Yeah,
circle.
1, 6, 11,
But what plus
16.
5 is still 6.
I thought
Huh?
eight, four.
Then 11, then 16, then 21.
So
Unless
you
you
use
do
the
the fourth
thing
one.
to
You do the
generate
fourth
four.
one.
No, I mean the fifth.
You do
You're only
one.
supposed to have how many total plots?
No, you circle them next. 'cause
4,
you
so
generate
1,
just
6,
number,
11,
one's
16.
five, and then you-
That's
Okay.
Mine
Just-
just overlap, right?
No, okay.
Yeah. By the way, guys, those 2 lines that are there, that was supposed to be the river. I don't know how that got off. That's my bad.
So like I got a 3, so then I count 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then I circle 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then I circle 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's stupid. Yeah, so you circle 1, then you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you circle 6, and then you add 5. So you
So
circle
is it
11.
okay for 3? Is it okay for any of those to be
I had to read that one.
I mean, those
Mm-hmm.
5
The
rows.
X's would be like the ring one, and then the O's would be the
Why is there a
one.
river? It says
Wait.
one right there.
Oh, wait, hold on.
Four is-
Each row, was that 1 supposed to be here?
Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, no, the 4's supposed to be there.
Okay.
So
Yep.
who? Yes. For the question that says what does it take to earn full credit on examples like
Oh, that's the label,
label,
generate unique numbers, and select those numbers, or select the individuals associated with those numbers.
select individuals associated with those numbers.
Yeah.
This is like the AP thing.
Oh, wait a minute.
This is just.
Yeah, 4's fine.
All right, so do you all have your plots selected? So they've all been some type of random, right? So what made, systematic?
Because you did every one after you chose it.
So there was a what?
System.
System, right?
Arithmetic, I don't know.
Well, it's literally a system
To how you choose.
of selecting
I understand.
every, we call it kth number, right? So it's just, in this case, every 5th number. It's a system in selecting every 5th number, okay? And I will point out, based on this system, does every number have an equally likely chance of being selected?
Yeah.
And there's an initial random, right? So every number has an equal chance of being selected, but it's not a simple random sample because every collection of n objects is not equally likely, right? So just because it's random does not mean it's a simple random sample. And so we have to be careful about that. What was a stratified? What happened to get that stratified sample?
We did that?
Did you not do the second set down there?
No.
Yeah, do that second set for me then,
Crap.
while I set something up.
What, 34? 34, yeah.
Yep, follow those directions.
I thought we just went.
So for this one, notice it says randomly choose 1 plot from each horizontal row.
Oh.
So for this row, randomly generate a 1, 2, 3, or 4.
Oh, okay, I thought we
It
were
was a
just.
calculator.
So did you
or-
select, so for the cluster, it
It's
was a
just
column. So if
choose.
you select the number 3, you do the entire row, or entire column.
So do we, for the second set, do we use like us?
I saw you used like
Or choose.
computer.
Huh? No, calculator. Always calculator, sorry. Always, always, always randomly generate with a calculator. Always, always, always.
So do you want 1, 4?
Wait, so we take 5 samples for that
1,
one?
2, 3, 4. Yeah.
Say again.
1, 4,
Do we
5.
take 5?
Yeah, you're gonna do 5 plots for one, for
Oh,
the
I see.
second set.
What's your
Five,
Boy, how'd you do that?
5, let's go.
Oh, okay. I mean, I guess that's possible. Yeah, because I got 2, 3, 1, 3, 1. I got 4, 1, 2, 4. Literally. 4 means like death in Japanese culture. 4 means you're protected by the angels. That's in our culture.
I was thinking of Yahtzee.
Yahtzee, hello. When you said that, I was saying yeah, I thought you said
That's
Yahtzee
why
too.
I know.
I was like,
I said
oh.
Yahtzee, there's 5 spots. It was
I was like, you do.
the 4 fours. No, the 4 fours.
Invited, and I was like, I'm not doing
No. 4 5.
Okay, now we select 4 one more time. For the column thing.
We got columns straight down there.
We call them for the building.
So you should have 1 4 5.
1 4 1, like what you've been doing, because there's 4 columns to choose from.
3. So I got 3 right.
Now I just circle all the 3s. Oh crap, I marked the ones that circle, it's supposed to be X. I'm failing.
Ooh, guys, we gotta move really quickly. Alright, so let's define what each of these are. So what happened in stratified?
You pick like 1 from each column or row.
Okay, so in a stratified system, you have what's called a stratum. That's literally what it's called. So in a stratified system, you're gonna have a group and select a sample from in the group. Okay? In stratified, you're going to have a group and you're going to select from inside that group. Okay? In a cluster, we had a group again, didn't we?
Yes.
But what did we do with the group in the cluster?
Select all of it.
You select the entire group. Stratified versus cluster is one of those small things that a lot of students struggle with the detail. Pay attention to stratify. You have a group and you select a sample from the group. So we had the row and we selected some from that row. In a cluster, you just select the entire group, okay? Which of these samples, these random samples, do you think is the best? Do you think they're all unbiased?
Mr. Kenny, we
Photos.
supposed to report
Yeah.
out attendance.
I think SRS is the best.
SRS is the best? Think that's always gonna be the case?
No,
No.
at least for the case of like the manager of the mall.
Okay.
If you're just like randomly trying to like pick something, I think that's definitely the best.
Okay. So I'm gonna show you something in a second, and I will need y'all to do obviously a little bit of homework, but I'll explain this in a second. Let's say that I want to know the average amount that doctors make. Okay, the average amount that doctors make. Why might it be a better time to get a better understanding to use stratified with doctors than it would be to use just a pure simple random sample?
Because you could like,
There's different types of
Yeah,
doctors.
different.
Oh, there's different types of doctors. So there's groups of doctors out there?
Yeah.
Oh, and so maybe I want to select a group, or select from within that group. Because I think a pediatrician might make a very different amount than a cardiac surgeon.
Also depends if they're like in residency or not.
Yeah.
Oh, if they're in residency or not, so maybe their experience as well. So this is what I want you to understand. Randomness has to be there, but sometimes you want a different type of sampling. Because it's unlikely, but with a simple random sample, is it possible to get all pediatricians?
yes,
Does that give me an accurate representation?
no.
No.
See what I'm saying? So sometimes stratified is the way to go because you want to make sure you get some from every group. You still need randomness though. Cluster sampling, is not really ever the best, but I can tell you this. Cluster is way easier than it is to do just about any of these. Because let's say that I want to survey the different, I want to survey the students at Hillcrest High School. Well, I could stratify them in different ways and do like 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th, right? And then take a few from each of those groups, right? Or I could say, you know what? I bet that the advisories are heterogeneous and somewhat representative of the population already. So I'm just going to randomly select a few of the advisory classes. And if I take the entire advisory class, that would be a cluster sample. So I'm taking the entire group. Now, that doesn't mean I just take one. I might take multiple, but I would randomly select advisories. So if you ever take an entire group that you think is heterogeneous, that's cluster sampling. That's one thing I should have put a note of up here. With clusters, need to be heterogeneous. They already need to look like the population. And if clusters are heterogeneous, already mixed, what are your strata going to be?
Mix.
Homogeneous, right? So strata are homogeneous.
And this is like math grade bio.
Okay? So strata are homogeneous because I want to select just pediatricians or some from just the pediatricians. I want to select just from neurologists. I want to select just from cardiac surgeons. So I make sure I get each. Okay? So please read on that because we don't have enough time to cover it. I think this is there, and on the next page, I need you to find the averages for each of those so we can come back and put this on the board. We will not have a quiz on Monday, but we will have a quiz on Tuesday. I need to think about what I'm going to assign for y'all. Please write the best email address for yourself up here before you leave, unless it's just the school email address. I'll think about it and I'll shoot you an email of what assignment I need you to complete. Okay?
You have all of that.
Which one's
That's
that?
true. Well, just write your preferred one up there for me. If it's not the school email address, put your preferred email address up there. That bell's about to catch us. But I will shoot y'all an email of what to do before we come back on Monday, so that we don't
Oh, I
get
have
too
some
far
numbers
behind.
like that. So is this one number, whatever this
That's
is?
on page 7.
Yes.
Okay.
So,
Well, that one's on page 7 though. Page 7 has that.
Got it.
Yeah.
okay, so sorry, I just realized there are even more of these. Finish up just collecting these samples. Okay, that's not all you're gonna do, but make sure you finish through page 7 and homework number 2, and I'll let you know what else to do,
Are we
okay?
gonna do homework number 2?
You can look at it if you want, but remember, that's always just check your understanding. I'm not gonna grade it.
Okay.
But I will think about what assignment to do, but definitely you're finishing through that
So
selection
this is our
process.
first
Man, that's
tomorrow.
good email.
Yeah, if you need to take a calculator so that you have a random number generator, please do that. You can find them online, they're just not the best. Leave the hat though. Take the yellow hat off
Oh,
the
so
top.
we had one of these,
So
but we lost the charger, so.
Well, you can always charge it here if you need to. I actually have plenty of chargers.
Yeah, I
Well,
still
I'll
have
say,
it.
if I could find, 'cause I think it's in my room somewhere anymore. I can find it on radio.
Brett, did you need to borrow a calculator? Or are you good?
No.
Okay.
My calculator does that.
I have 500.
Okay. I will say this, I would practice using this.
Okay,
Did you never did get a chance to look at these, did you? Just put it right here.
Look at what?
The new game.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you said someone write an email somewhere, or?
Yeah, write your email on that board if the best email for you is not your school email.
Oh, okay.
If it's your school email, then I'll
You
just.
already have my email, right?
You remember, that, sure.
I mean, sure. We all right? Yeah, I
Does-
think we're good to go.
It just looks beautiful, doesn't it? Like,
Oh my gosh, that looks like magic.
I know.
Those samples things at the beginning.
It's
Yeah.
something he posted on
Isn't that,
his.
is that similar to like stochastic gradient descent?
Alright, have a good day.
You too. Have a great weekend, y'all.
Is that similar to stochastic gradient descent, and batch gradient descent, batch gradient descent?
This looks
I
like.
have no clue what you just said.
What is it?
Never
It's a
said
math
it.
game.
Stochastic gradient?
Can we please
Yes,
play
stochastic gradient
this?
descent.
100%.
Does it ring a bell?
No.
What is this?
It's a
So
math game.
here's how, I mean, I think y'all gonna need to leave, I assume, but,
No, I don't got a place to be. No rehearsal today. Let's go.
There
so,
isn't, or there is?
No, there's not.
What do you mean there isn't?
They're choreographing
What?
I'm just showing people who want to see how to play this game.
Sea Star Savior.
Oh.
It's a new game.
Looks like D&D.
It looks like mine.
So here's how this works. Hey, can you stop the camera? Because the camera doesn't really need.
Cut the cams.
Yeah.
No, I
We're doing
think they
sketchy
would-
He's about to do, yeah, I was gonna say he's about to do some more.
Whoever's watching this
That's
will
right.
probably enjoy that.
So here's how this game works.